All right, Bobby Brink. He's a player specifically that, like, we've said things like, oh, if there's a surprise to make this team, a surprise at forward, like Samu Tuamala comes out, has a great camp, right. It could be Brink's spot, like Massimo Rizzo, whoever. Yeah. If someone is going to be supplanted by basically this year's Bobby Brink, it will be Bobby Brink. Yes. Because it just seems as if he's the one kind of bubble guy still, even though he made the team out of camp last year and had a pretty damn strong start to his NHL career. Yes. The way the season ended, he gets demoted in mid-January. He scored right away when he came back up. His first 2 games back up, he scored a goal, but I think he played 25 games after his re-promotion, and he put up 5 points, something like that. Or it was 19 games after he came back, he put up 5 points. But in total, it was like 25 or 26 games, and he put up 5 freaking points. So very bad ending. We all know what happened in Game 82. He, along with Morgan Frost, gets benched for the final 30 minutes of the game. Interesting decision, but
that's one way to put it.
You know, two of your top 8 guys in points per game you need to score. I don't know, maybe they should be playing, but whatever. Brink himself surprised last year. He was pretty good. I liked what I saw, especially through just the new year. 48-point pace. He put up 18 points in 31 games through December 31st.
We had shows where you're like, is he a dark horse Calder contender?
He was, for a little while, keeping pace in certain statistical categories. It was always going to be Connor Bedard. Right. Unless Connor Bedard's leg fell off, he was going to win the trophy. I was like, hey, he might get some down ballot love. He's had a pretty good year. Then he went, after December 31st, he went 7 straight without a point, then gets sent down. And then, like I said, yes, ends up with 5 points in those final, 26 games. Not great. But he put up 13 points in 13 games with the Phantoms.
Yeah, he was very clearly too good for the age.
Yeah, he was a good scorer in college. He was very good at Denver. For a non-elite prospect, he was a second-round pick. No one's confusing him with Matvei Michkov. He could be a good middle 6 player, but I don't think anyone's like, oh, yeah, he's going to be a point-per-game guy. That would be nice, but I doubt it. It kind of seems like he had a pretty normal rookie year.
I would say so.
This is kind of what happens to rookies, especially for guys 18 months before had hip surgery and had shorter first seasons in the AHL where they're just kind of, we heard oh yeah, he's good distributor on the power play because he'll always be able to do that in the AHL, but he can't skate. He was out there on one leg. They're basically telling us.
When he came back from the injury, it was apparently rough.
Yeah, as I know we've said if someone is going to maybe get bumped, it's him, or he can become the 13th forward. But is anyone who could do that? Does anyone who could do that have a higher ceiling than Bobby Brink?
Well, so I do think that there's an element here where the idea of Brink not making the team, number one, the idea of Brink not making the team, I think is just, it's not going to happen. He's no longer waiver exempt. I do not think they're going to risk losing him for nothing just because he had a bad couple weeks of training camp. Could I envision a potential scenario where he ends up starting the year off as a scratch because somebody else who's a forward prospect has a monster camp? Sure, it's possible. But I do think we are probably, I don't even think that we are exaggerating the possibility, because I think every time we bring it up, we say he's probably making the team. But it's more like we have a daily podcast, so we have to be like, well, if anybody isn't going to be on the team, isn't going to be in the lineup that we think probably is, it's got to be Brink, because everyone else, you can't envision a scenario where they're not. He's the only guy where it's even a little bit plausible he might not be in the lineup, who seems like a lot. So we might be talking about a little bit more than we should be.
Making the team and in the lineup are two different things, and maybe I framed it poorly. He's making the freaking team.
You would think.
They're not waiving Bobby Brink. That would be quite a surprise.
Yes.
This is John Tortorella, sure, but they're not waiving Bobby Brink, probably. Probably. But we're looking right now, you look at the lineup, and if it is as is, you go, all right, 13 forwards, probably going to be some moving around, but Delorier looks like the odd man. But I think he's going to play, especially in the first half of the season. If an extra guy makes the team, like was the case last year, 2 extra guys made the team, and they were like, we'll figure it out. it could be Bobby Brink relegated at least to start to press box duty.
Yeah. I think that
is a real possibility.
If he has a bad camp and Samu Tuamala has a great camp, I could even see a scenario where, let's say, none of the prospects have a great camp and nobody bangs the door down and earns their way. I could envision a scenario where Brink is a healthy scratch for game 1 anyway, if he has a bad camp, and they just have Deloria on line 4 and they have Noah Cates on line 3 and Bobby's in the press box. I think that's possible. Now, again, this is assuming Brink has a bad camp.
Yeah.
If Brink has a good camp, he's in the lineup. He's making the team. He's in the lineup because they're excited about it. One of the big reasons why they bought out Cam Atkinson is because Mishkov's coming and Brink still needs a spot. So, okay, well, Cam's gone. There's your spot, Bobby. They like Bobby Brink. But I equate the way that I suspect John Tortorella views him to be the way that John Tortorella viewed Cam York going into last camp, where he straight up said, this is the beginning of camp. John Tortorella, and we saw what happened with Cam York this year. He straight up said, I don't know if Cam York's an NHL player yet. He's got to prove that to me still. Now, Cam York very much did.
Yeah.
He ended up starting out the year in the top 4. By the end of the year, he was a top pair defenseman.
He was the number 1 defenseman by the end of the year.
Probably. But this time last year, John Tortorella was not fully sold. And I suspect if you ask him about Bobby Brink, he'll say something similar. Bobby had a nice rookie year. He did some nice things, but he still needs to prove he's an every night NHL player. I am hopeful he will, but I don't think he has quite proven that, especially not to someone as demanding as the head coach of this hockey team.
That's the, I guess that's really where all these conversations come down to, is like this guy.
All roads lead back to John Tortorella.
It's really like the Tortorella of it all could be the subtitle of all of our podcasts. I guess, like we're talking about these development paths for guys. I don't see how a rebuilding team can scratch a Bobby Brink. Like, I don't see how that makes a little bit of sense for them whatsoever.
Last year, a rebuilding team scratched Morgan Frost.
And that was silly.
Yes,
it was silly.
But it happened.
It happened 10 times. I get, but it's just, I don't get this development idea. Listen, if it's in service of Samu Tuamala playing, like he knocks down the door, he makes the team, dope. All right, then we have now we have competition. We have competition on our third line. Who's going to be this guy? Okay, I can live with that. It's just like, I don't know, man. How much do we need some of these players that are like?
Well, but again, this goes back to something I've said on Twitter. I say in the Discord all the time. Don't get mad about something before it happens. Right now, we are very much speaking in hypotheticals. And the only reason why we're bringing up Bobby Brink as a potential scratch option is because, well, somebody's going to have to sit at some point. And if they want Deloria in the lineup, if they really like Cates, like, yeah, I guess there are other guys we could be naming. You know, Joel Farabee hasn't rubbed towards the right way all the time. Could he be a game 1 surprise scratch? Like, I don't think so, but you never know.
Imagine a $5 million game 1 scratch.
Yeah, it would be insanity in the moment, but John Tortorella doesn't shy away from insanity. So I do not envision a scenario where Travis Konechny, Owen Tippett, Matvei Michkov is scratched for game 1. But there are other guys. There are other guys where you're like, Torts is the kind of crazy where like that's not completely out of the realm of possibility in his head. And Bobby Brink is very much in the realm of possibility.
Yeah, I mean, he got sent down. He went on a 7-game pointless streak last year after being on a 48-point pace and then immediately got sent down. Yeah. Like, it's very possible. I would just like from you, because you study the prospect pool more than me. You have more concrete thoughts. I watch them play and go, oh, I like them. Oh, I don't. And every time I see them play, my opinion changes.
And you forget what you thought of them 48 hours before.
Talked about at 4:20 today. That's when I did the reads. Is there a forward prospect right now that could potentially bump Brink to the press box that has a higher ceiling than Bobby Brink?
It's an interesting question. Tuamala is probably the closest because Tuamala, I think, definitely has a better skating tool. And I guess if all breaks right, he could be a second liner. I don't think that's what he's going to be, but I guess he could, maybe with the right line mates. Rizzo, in theory, again, with him, we talked about him. It's more like, well, either it's going to translate or it's not.
Yeah.
Well, in rookie camp, it didn't look like it's going to, but sometimes guys have mediocre rookie camps, and then in main camp, it hits. Bobby Brink had a mediocre rookie camp last year, and it clicked for him like a week into main camp, and then from that point on, it was off to the races. So can't rule that out. And hey, if Rizzo's skill set translates, yeah, maybe he could be a second liner. He's like a top 6 or bust kind of guy. But I do agree with you that looking at the guys, and I guess if you want to open the door to this possibility, Jet Luchenko has a higher upside than Bobby.
Okay.
He does.
That outside possibility, which after criticizing or at least calling into question the Flyers' development path, I'm like, no, I might actually agree with the Jet Luchenko one, I think. But listen, if he makes the team, I'm going to be excited because
it'll be exciting.
New shiny toy.
Exactly.
First round pick made the team.
But I would say other than Luchenko, I do not think that there is a prospect who is at a forward prospect at this camp who theoretically could make the team and has a higher plausible upside in my mind than Bobby Brink. No, I don't think there is. And I really like Tuamala.
Yeah, I like what I've seen out of Tuamala, and he was on my guys I like list from the rookie games. He's creative. He's a good skater. He's fun to watch. Right. He does things.
Yeah,
I love guys who do things. Yeah. We've got a lot of guys who don't.
And he does stuff.
We've had them plenty over the years. This guy does stuff. Mm-hmm. It's fun. But I just see... like I said, I don't think he's going to be a point-a-game player, but I see exactly what you want in a middle six winger out of Bobby Brink. Guy who can be maybe the primary distributor on like a power play 2, if not at least a complement on power play 1. Like I just think he does a lot of things well. He gives you a great chance in shootouts. That's something they badly need because
regular season, it's important.
Still part of the game.
It is.
He's still listed at like 169. Is he beefed up at all, Bobby Brink?
Well, but this actually was a conversation that popped up in Discord today because one of our
allphly.com,
one of our regulars in Discord posted the weights of the players going into last year's camp versus the weights of the same players going into this year's camp, and then created like a chart of, oh, this guy gained this much more, or this guy lost, or whatever. And it was an interesting look, and I do think there's something to be taken from an analysis like that. But what I had to point out was that they haven't done the physicals yet. Like they released those weights yesterday. These guys have not checked in to know what they actually weigh per the Flyers. So that weight for Bobby Brink is what he measured at last year. Because the big one that this guy pointed out was, oh my God, Travis Sanheim, beginning of last year's camp was at 180. Now he's at 220 or something. And I was like, okay, but that was last year. He made the gains. The gains were real. But what it was that going into last year's camp, he was, by the Flyers' measurements, at 189, I think. And then by the Flyers' measurements after day 1 of camp, it was, oh, man, you packed on the weight, bud. It's not that he's gained 25 pounds going into this camp, is that he gained that last year, and this is the first sign that the numbers are actually accounting for.
It was like the big talking point last year. It was like, yo, Sanheim's twice the size he was.
Yeah.
We all silly like the mayor.